Hello everybody, welcome to the UFC 309 predictions video. I'm going to be getting into my predictions on these fights coming up. Obviously, main event, Jon Jones versus Stipe Miocic and Michael Chandler are the two big ones, but I'll be starting with the early prelims, going all the way to the main event. So let's get right into it. First fight on the early prelims is Veronica Hardy versus Eduarda Moura. Veronica Hardy 9-4-1. And Eduardo Mora's 10-1. Obviously, Veronica Hardy kind of had a bit of a reworking of her style. Took a break, came back, looks much better. Eduardo Mora coming off a loss, split decision loss to Denise Gomez, who we just saw have a win last week, I'm pretty sure. But I really like I like Veronica Hardy as the favorite here. She's minus 160, and Eduardo Mora is plus 125. But I think this would be a pretty close fight. I mean, they're both pretty close in age. Mora has a 2-inch reach advantage, and she's taller. So and the thing is Eduardo Mora is moving up from strawweight to flyweight here. So she's not going to be cutting weight. There's that, number one. And obviously she's just, I don't know, physically larger than Hardy. So might be a bit of a disadvantage moving up. But I'm going to go with Eduardo Mora here by decision. Moving on to the second early prelim fight. This is Oban Elliott taking on Basil Fez. This is in the 170 weight class. I really like Oban Elliott, especially his last fight against, I gotta find the guy's name. He was a Preston Parsons wrestler, but Oban Elliott has had very high quality wins for being an unranked 175 pounder. Val Woodburn, a lot of people like Val Woodburn, myself included. He did get rocked by Val Woodburn, but came back and won that one. Also rocked him on his own. Preston Parsons, great wrestler. He was able to stuff all the takedowns and outbox him. I like the improvements of Oban Elliott. He's 26 years old, 11-2. Just very, he's improving his wrestling defense. Striking is great. Basil Fez, on the other hand, had a great fight against another guy on this card, Mickey Gall. And before that, he went to split decision with JDM. Although I really disagreed with that being a split decision in the first place. That was pretty clear JDM because he damaged Basil a ton. Basil was very good at wrestling. He's got pretty decent pop in his shots. Wasn't able to put away Mickey Gall, which Mike Malott did. But I'm going to go with Oban Elliott here, the Welsh gangster. I'm going to go with him. Basil Fez is a pretty tough guy as well. Very hard to TKO. He's been rocked couple times. I mean, JDM hurt him to the body a couple times, and Mickey Gall kind of wobbled him at one point in their fight. But I'm gonna go with Oban Elliott, and I'm gonna go by decision. I think just because of how tough Basil is in his wrestling, I think he'll be able to survive if he gets hurt at all. Moving on up to Mickey Gall taking on Ramiz Brahimaj. This is another welterweight bout. Mickey Gall, 7-6, obviously known as the legend who beat CM Punk. LOL. If you couldn't hear my sarcasm, obviously CM Punk. He's one of those guys that UFC got in very early in his career. If you look at his losses: Randy Brown, Diego Sanchez, Mike Perry, Mike Malott, Alex Morono, Basil Fez. He hasn't lost to terrible competition. Obviously, he's 7-6, which is just like a very bad UFC record. But he's not a terrible fighter. And Ramiz Brahimaj, I saw his last fight. Hold on, I gotta pull it up. Lost to Garimbo by decision. Obviously, Garimbo, I'm a fan of Garimbo's, and he's going for that title shot. Probably not. But, I think I have to favor Mickey Gall here just because he's got so much more experience at the, I won't even say the top, but just with UFC level competition, I feel like he's been in the UFC his whole career basically, and fought some pretty not top tier guys, but average, above average UFC guys. That these, you're not gonna scoff at looking at their names on a piece of paper. So I'm gonna go with Mickey Gall here. Another decision, kind of a lot of early decisions. Gonna move on to Marcin Tybura taking on Jonata Deniz. Jonata Deniz, great kickboxer, 8-0 record so far, 2-0 in the UFC. Loved this fight against Carl Williams. Did pretty good defending the takedowns. Wobbled Carl Williams a couple times. Wasn't able to get the TKO, but he got the win. And Marcin Tybura coming off that loss to Sergey Spivak by armbar really early on. And then before that, he subbed tied to Ivasa. Which, who hasn't? I mean, we saw Volkov get an Ezekiel choke on him, which is a hard choke to pull off in MMA. So, I will say Tybura is pretty good on the ground. I mean, he has 8 sub wins. Obviously, not a whole lot in the UFC if you go back and look through. I wouldn't say pretty good. He's decent on the ground. Spivak obviously has that Sambo experience. And Deniz is basically, I don't want to say unexperienced on the ground, but he really is. Doesn't have a ton of experience. Obviously a kickboxer. He is younger than Marcin Tybura. He's 6 years younger. Jonata Deniz is 33, and Tybura is 39. Deniz, I mean, this is his first decision, and he looked a little tired in that third round. Didn't look extremely gassed like Austin Lane did in their second round, but he finds people's chins a lot. And I mean, we saw what happened when Marcin Tybura went up against a very competent striker like Aspinall, who's very fast and very powerful. So I'm gonna go Deniz by. I won't say he's gonna be able to knock him out as quick as Aspinall, because Aspinall is a beast and can find people. Finish people very early on because of his speed. But I'm going to go with Deniz in the second round by knockout. And all due respect to Tybura, he's a top 10 level heavyweight. But yeah, I really like Deniz's striking skill, and he's, as long as his wrestling defense is improving and he's getting better at defending takedowns and scrambling and all that, I see him winning against a lot of guys in the top 10 just because of his striking pedigree. Let's move on to now this is the prelims. David Onama is taking on Roberto Romero. Short notice for Roberto Romero. Onama, big fan of Onama's. He's on a bit of a win streak right now. His last loss was to Nate the Train in a fight of the year contender. Crazy fight, where he 10-8'd Nate the Train in the first round and then lost, kind of gassed out after he tried to finish him. Or was this second round? But very close fight. Then his other fight was a knockout win over Gabriel Santos. Crazy uppercut knockout in the second round. He was kind of losing on the feet a little bit. Not getting blown out, but Santos is a very skilled striker, but Onama able to find the chin, knocked him out cold. And then after that, Jonathan Pierce won by decision. Pretty good scrambles by Pierce, or by Onama against Pierce. Was able to reverse a lot of positions in that fight. That was a good fight by Onama. He's a young guy. He's 30, 12-2. And Roberto Romero is obviously a guy coming off the regional scene. 8-3-1. He doesn't really have many, big notable wins. So I'm going with Onama here. I'm going with Onama, and I'm going to pick him by decision because I think this guy, Roberto Romero, is going to give him a pretty tough fight, but I think Onama's just got the UFC pedigree to get this win. Moving on to a 155 bout. This is Jim effing Miller, taking on Damon Jackson, Mr. Hairline himself. Damon Jackson moving up to 155 here to take on Jim Miller. 41-year-old Jim Miller taking on 36-year-old Damon Jackson. The reaches are both 71 inches. I'm going to have to go with... It's kind of hard because I don't really like picking the older guys in a lot of these matchups, although I feel like I'm going to do that a couple times tonight. But I got to go with Jim Miller. He's been able to knock out a lot of young up-and-comers. Obviously, we saw him get beat up by Bobby Green, but Bobby Green is really hard to just straight-up box with on the feet. Like, one of the very skilled counter-strikers. Damon Jackson, on the other hand, his last couple wins haven't really impressed me. Like, I thought he lost to Alexander Hernandez. Chepe Mariscal, thought he lost to him, but he did lose on the scorecards. Other than that, lost to Billy Quarantillo. Knockout loss to Dan Ige. Topuria obviously knocked him out. That was quite a bit ago. So, honestly, if you don't have that robbery win for against Hernandez, you're looking at a 4-fight losing streak here. Jim Miller obviously was on a win streak up until he lost to Bobby Green. He was on a 2-fight win streak, both finishes. So I really like Jim Miller here. He's in this weight class. Damon Jackson's moving up, so I'm favoring Jim Miller. Gonna go Jim Miller, and I'm actually gonna say by knockout here. Don't like the hair plugs for the chin. No, that's just me being stupid. Yeah, I will go by knockout, but not because he's got hair plugs. Just gonna pick him by knockout. Round 3, late knockout. Damon Jackson kind of gassing out. Let's move on to another old head here. There's a lot of 40-year-olds on this card. Chris Weidman taking on Eric Anders. This is gonna be, I don't want to say a bad fight, but I mean, Weidman, obviously former champion, but he's getting older. Not the fighter that he used to be. Eric Anders, never really thought of Eric Anders as a very high-level fighter. Obviously, I think he's most known for getting styled on, however long ago that was, 5 years ago by Khalil Roundtree, when Khalil Roundtree beat the crap out of him. And then a lot of people will know him as Marc-Andre Barriault went to war with him. And won. Mark no power bar and no chin. Marc Barriault got the win over Anders. So I'm gonna go with old washed up underdog Chris Weidman here. He's 40 years old. I'm picking another 40-year-old in this card. I'm picking 2 back to back, but I really gotta just favor Chris Weidman here. He's got the wrestling, got the decent striking. And yeah, I mean, there's a 3-year age gap here. They're both kind of older. And Weidman has the reach advantage. So you're going to go with Chris Weidman here. And I'm going to go with just decision, just kind of strike and grapple his way to victory. Nothing, I don't think there's going to be any damaging shots. Moving on up to, this is going to be an awesome fight. Jonathan Martinez taking on Marcus McGee. Marcus the Maniac McGee, if you know him, he's kind of an older guy. He's 34 years old, and I know it's kind of a red flag when you see a prospect who's over the age of like 30. It's kind of like a little sus, but his last 2 knockout wins over JP Buys and Gaston Bolaños were awesome knockouts. Obviously, one in the first round, one in the second round. And he rocked Bolaños in the first round as well, if I recall correctly. Really impressed with Marcus McGee, and if he can get a win here, which I'm predicting him to get a win, I think we can see his stock go higher, get a ranking here. Obviously, Martinez coming off that loss to Jose Aldo, and then before that he's got a lot of wins by leg kick TKO, very hard leg kicker. Obviously, Jose Aldo, one of the most hard to leg kick fighters. He's so great at checking them and avoiding them. So Martinez kind of got coughing baby versus atomic bomb in that situation. But I'm gonna go with Marcus McGee here, and I'm gonna pick him by knockout. In round 2, I just really like Marcus McGee striking, and there's about a 1/2 inch of reach advantage for Martinez. I think McGee's going to keep it close, uses pocket boxing, and pocket box him out cold. If you know, you know. Moving on up, we got Mauricio Rufy versus James Longtop. This is a pretty quick one for me. Mauricio Rufy, fighting nerd. Looking like baby Conor McGregor in his last fight, 28 years old. James Longtop, pretty sure he got out-colded. Yeah. Oh, wait, no, he didn't get out-colded. He did get dropped by Vyacheslav Borshev. He's on a 2-loss streak in the UFC. I'm going to go with Mauricio Rufy, and I'm going to pick him by knockout and in round 1, I'm going to pick him early knockout because I think James Longtop is not better than Jamie Malarkey, who I don't think is that good either. But, yeah, picking Rufy here. Baby McGregor is going to get another first-round knockout. Moving on up to Karine Silva versus Viviana Araujo, I think is how you say it. Karine Silva is a minus 295 favorite here. She's 30 years old, and Araujo is 37, about to turn 38. Obviously, I think I'm going to go with Karine Silva here. Just going to pick her by decision. I might pick her by submission. But it's a little tough. I'm going to go with, you know what? I'll go Silva by sub round 3. Maybe round 2. But, yeah, I like Silva's ground game, man. Her submission ability. Let's move on up to Bo Nickel taking on Paul Craig. Middleweight fight here. Obviously, Paul Craig is got some crazy good names on his resume. Obviously, submission win over Jamal Hill and Magomed Ankalaev. He's one of those guys that you can never count out. You can also never really trust because he's got a submission loss to Brendan Allen. TKO loss to Kyle Barajo. Lost to Johnny Walker. Lost to Volkan Ozdemir. He's very hit or miss in terms of, you know, his fighting ability. And it went over Nikita Krylov. Forgot about that. But I have to go with Bo Nickel here. Like his wrestling ability, and I don't even think he needs to wrestle here. We saw him TKO Val Woodburn on the feet. And Paul Craig does not have a very good chin, especially at middleweight. Paul Craig really only throws like naked kicks when he, you know, is striking, and he doesn't really have any wrestling to take the fight down like he'd be able to anyway against Bo Nickel. I really don't think Bo Nickel needs to wrestle at all. It's just more dangerous for him than just striking the whole fight. So I think he will just strike with Paul Craig and knock him out in round 1 or 2 because he's got pretty good power. And I think Paul Craig's going to be thinking more about the wrestling. I mean, he's obviously a wrestle-first guy, and his striking is not all that. So, yeah, going to go with Bo Nickel by knockout round 2. Then we're going to move on to the co-main event of the evening. Charles DuBronx taking on Iron Michael Chandler. This is a top 5 matchup, although I think Chandler's out of the top 5 now. This is a really hard fight for me to pick. We got Chandler, 2 years of inactivity, I'm pretty sure. Fighting Oliveira, who's coming off a loss at UFC 300 to Arman Tsarukyan. Split decision loss, very close fight. Here's what we have going for Michael Chandler. Michael Chandler was able to rock Oliveira in their first fight in the first round. Obviously, what's going against him is he got knocked out in the second round right at the beginning. And I will say, I mean, Charles got very close to submitting Chandler in that first round. So this is kind of a hard fight for me to pick. Chandler can definitely find the chin of Charles Oliveira, and he can also definitely get submitted by Charles. I really like Chandler's wrestling ability, and I really like Charles' striking offense. His striking defense is a lot to be desired. He's not that great on defense. Obviously, he's shown improvement since his last couple fights because he was able to slip some punches when he was fighting Dariush and Tsarukyan. Um, so for Charles, we did see Saryukian control him and elbow him on the ground, which I think Chandler might try and do because he's been saying he's, fighting more intelligently. Obviously, that is a dangerous place to be against a guy who has 19 finishes. Or is it 21 finishes? I don't know off the top of my head. 21 subs and 10 wins by knockout. So, I mean, just a crazy. So it's 16 submission wins in the UFC, 4 knockouts. So he has 20 finishes. Charles, he's a very dangerous guy almost anywhere. Obviously, I think for Chandler, being that his chin is not bad. I will say this: he gets rocked a lot. He's very good at recovering. He got dropped by Dustin, and that was a very, very clean left that Dustin hit Chandler with, and he did not get knocked out cold like Benoit did. But basically, I wouldn't say the exact same, but a very, very similar punch in power. I think that was on those 2 punches. Chandler was able to, survive that fight. Got submitted on the 3rd round, but striking with Charles was going to be very dangerous, as well as trying to wrestle and out grapple him. But I think if Chandler wants to make all 3 rounds, his best chance is grappling and just offensively wrestling, dropping elbows like he did in round 2 against Dustin, round 1 partially. As much as it pains me to do this, because I really like Charles Oliveira, I'm a big fan of his. His champion career was so awesome. I'm going to pick Michael Chandler here, and I'm going to pick him by decision, dominant wrestling decision, where maybe we see some submissions thrown up by Charles, just like he did in UFC 300. And I don't know, maybe now the more I'm thinking about it, maybe we see Charles get a submission here. He is very dangerous on the ground, and this is a very hard fight to pick for me. Still a little up in the air about it, but I think I'm going to go with Chandler. I'm going to stick with Michael Chandler. Let's move on. Finally, last fight on the card: Jon Jones taking on Stipe Miocic. Jon Jones is a minus 650 favorite here. Huge favorite. Taking on Stipe. Stipe is 42. This is another 40-year-old. I, for one, really wish we could have seen Tom Aspinall fighting this weekend against Jon Jones, because as much as I like Stipe, and as much as I think Stipe is a heavyweight GOAT, he is very past his prime. Unless, he comes out there looking great. Obviously, we don't know. But it's not great to see his last fight in the UFC be in the year 2021, and it's a knockout loss to Francis Ngannou. Obviously, who doesn't get knocked out by Ngannou? He's such a hard hitter. But, we haven't seen Stipe in the UFC octagon for 3 years. The last time he was fighting, I think they were still wearing Reebok shorts. So, that's how long ago this was. Was it? Were they still wearing Reebok shorts? They might have just switched over to Venom. But, yeah, Stipe, he's getting up there in age. Obviously, I really, he's a Golden Gloves boxing, good wrestler. But I'm unfortunately, I don't know. I kind of just want to pick Stipe Miocic. But if you're betting, bet on Jon Jones. Well, actually, if you're betting, sprinkle a little bit on Stipe. You're going to get great odds for Stipe, because everyone is counting him out for the reasons I just listed. He's older. He's coming off a loss. We know they're trying to give Jon Jones a layup here so he can retire and duck Aspinall. But here's another question mark with Jon Jones. We haven't really seen him take an actual full fight at heavyweight. He hasn't gone a full 25 minutes. His gas tank really isn't in question here. We've seen him go a full 25 minutes a lot in his career. Stipe, obviously, we know he can go 25 minutes at 265. So, in conclusion, if you're boring and you want to, see Jon Jones eye poke and and oblique kick his way to victory. Yes, probably he's going to do that. But if you were rooting for a crazy outcome where Stipe gets a knockout, join me because I will actually be betting for Stipe here. I'm going to bet on Stipe winning by knockout, fluke knockout. Team Fluke, here we are. Team Fluke, knockout round 2. Other than that, guys, that's going to be it. This is kind of an underwhelming Madison Square Garden card. It's not the worst card. I mean, we have Oliveira versus Chandler, Bo Nichols fighting, obviously. We have Karine Silva versus Vivian Araujo on the main card. Like, what the hell? Mauricio Rufy, really great fighter, but on the main card of a fight, this is his second fight in the UFC. I would like to see much better fights. I know, obviously, Nikita Krylov was supposed to fight, and Mirzakhanov drew out. But yeah, it's just kind of disappointing for a UFC pay-per-view. They're really just counting on Jon Jones to sell this one and Charles to sell this one. I will be watching regardless, but yeah, just thought I'd let my opinion be known. All right, thank you guys for watching. See ya.